So good evening. Thank you for coming to tonight's political panel hosted by Valparaiso University's College Democrats. My name is Lauren Clark and I will be your moderator for this evening. Tonight we will be having an open discussion on political issues that have caused headlines throughout the past year. Representing College Democrats, we have the president of the organization, Julian Garner. Julian is a junior political science major and an RA in Beacon Hall, and with him is Megan Solrin. She is a senior majoring in economics and is a member of College Democrats. Representing the College Republicans is Dylan Ogle, thank you. Dylan is a sophomore majoring in political science, and to Dylan's right we have John Lane. John is a freshman majoring in political science. So before we begin, there are a few rules of tonight's panel that I would like to explain. At least one member from each side must respond to each topic or question asked by myself for the evening. You must respond even if your response is, I do not wish to speak on this issue, or I do not have enough information to adequately address the question at the time. Please refrain from giving responses longer than 2 minutes. If your answer passes over 2 minutes, I will interject to end your response, as we only have a limited time to speak together tonight. For the last 10 minutes of the panel, we will open the discussion to members of the audience. As the moderator, I will be fair in giving each person an equal speaking time, and I will judge how long a response should be depending on the quality and pertinence of your question. Lastly, please do not use any outside sources. Each person on the panel is permitted to take notes. However, please refrain from using outside information in the discussion. Are there any questions? No questions? Okay. So with that being said, let's begin. To start this conversation, I would like to address the 2016 presidential election. And we will start with the Democrats as they're hosting this show tonight, and then we will go to the Republicans. So my first question for you guys is, did the election results shock you, and were they as you had predicted them to be?
All right, well, obviously, I think the election results were very shocking. We just came up on our, the 1 year anniversary of the 2016 election. I think a lot of us are still recovering from a little bit of aftershock from that night, especially the Democrats. No one necessarily, well, I won't say no one, but the vast majority of people who supported Hillary Clinton this past election, or Bernie Sanders, or other left-leaning parties didn't necessarily expect Donald Trump to win. But since he did, I think that we have to show him all the support as citizens of the United States and continue to go about our democratic morals and unite as a country, unite within our own parties, and move on from there. I guess I could go on later on about, him after the election, or, if he is acting presidential, but I'll leave it at that.
I know that I definitely did not expect Donald Trump to win this past election. That was quite a surprise, and I'm not a Trump supporter Republican, so I didn't take it very well. I actually ended up writing in this past election because I opted not to vote for either of the candidates. Yeah, it's definitely shocking, the outcome. There's only one analyst I saw who actually predicted that Trump would win, and I think the entire world was surprised.
I would say I'm not as shocked, because I think that it was a big part of of the United States citizens who do support him, but I just don't think they actively acknowledge that in polls and all that. The polls are obviously wrong, but I think that there was a clear eventually I could tell that Trump was going to win. I mean, obviously it was a surprise to me too, but I think that it actually ended up making sense in the end, because he connected a lot better.
So what were some of the Republicans' strong campaign strategies, in your opinion?
One of the things that I think went really well for the Republicans was the idea of political correctness, and the fact that Donald Trump oftentimes campaigned against that, because for the past 8 years prior to the election under Barack Obama, it felt as though a lot of the conservative opinions in the country had been more so repressed. And so you had a generation of voters who, for the first time, had spent 8 years listening to Fox News and conservative media, and they were very angry that these ideas weren't being expressed by both mainstream media outlets and the current administration. So really, it was Trump being able to tap into those voters and use that anger that a lot of conservatives had at Obama, and I think that's what put them over the top in the end. It also didn't hurt that the Democrats ran a very unlikable candidate.
I would say that, you know, in most elections, I don't think Trump would have won. A big part of it was because he went against Hillary, and Hillary had such a bad history, you know, criminal history and all that. And I just think that, you know, considering how unlike they both were, I think anybody else pretty much could have beaten Trump. But I think that Trump was able to tap into to regular day people, something that Hillary wasn't able to do. And that, you know, people acknowledge that, and people end up voting for him.
Thank you. So regarding the Democrats, what were some of the strong campaign actions and also some of the areas where they faltered?
Well, fortunately, Secretary Clinton had access to a tremendous amount of wealth, which I believe in many ways helped her campaign. Personally, I don't think Hillary Clinton was a horrible candidate, nor did she run an awful campaign. Obviously, there were a few shortcomings that she could have improved on, but at the end of the day, she tried to the best of her ability to continue to run on the Democratic platform and, you know, step back up to the plate after she faced relentless attacks from not only the Republican Party, but members from other countries, such as Russia. So at the end of the day, obviously she lost the campaign, but I do think that she was a very strong candidate that stood true to several of the Democratic morals or party beliefs. And, you know, obviously she had her shortcomings, and maybe she was not the most likable person to run for the office of the presidency, but running for presidency should not be a popularity contest. It should be a contest based off of who is temperamentally fit, who is adequate enough for the position of President of the United States, and who the American people can truly trust to have such an important position. So.
I think that the Democrats were divided. You see this in their inability to reach the middle class and lower class. This election, Democrats focused on the elitism, and they failed to connect the middle and lower class. I think that's something that we need to work on going into the next election. However, I will agree with Jillian. I was a Clinton fan from the time she announced her presidency. I think she was the best candidate on the ticket. However, I think that the way the Democrats went about it and the divisiveness of the Democratic Party definitely was a weakness in the 2016 election.
So Megan, you just touched on the next question that I wanted to announce, and that was regarding party unity during this election cycle. Do you guys think that unity was strong among Republicans?
Personally, no. I don't think that Republican unity was all that great. If you watched the primaries at all, we had 18 candidates in the running in the beginning, and most of them stayed in for a period longer than 3 months. And I think a lot of that has to do with Citizens United. Most of these candidates who managed to poll at less than 2% for most of the election still had funding through super PACs to maintain advertising presences, and a lot of them didn't drop out even after Iowa. And if you look at even the final polls, 60% of Republicans did not vote for Donald Trump in the primaries. And I think that's very telling of the hatred Republicans had for Hillary Clinton and how that was able to pull them together in the end, because it was really the decision of Republican or Democrat in the end, and they just didn't want the Democrats to win.
And it became a case of people were saying they're both evil. You got to vote for the one you think is less evil. And I mean, that definitely shows that there definitely wasn't unity, in the Republican Party. As he said, you had 18 candidates running, and at some point, people like John Kasich and Ben Carson, they didn't have the sense to know they should have dropped out. And we could have probably gotten together a good ticket to counter Trump, but unfortunately that never happened. And you end up having people like Evan McMullen, running, and third-party candidates were viable for the first time since like 2000. And that definitely shows that Republicans were not united. But in the end, it was enough. But that's all.
Thank you. So that brings me to our second topic, and I would like to discuss Donald Trump, our President Donald Trump's first year in office so far. Has he lived up to his campaign promises, and in what ways is he exceeding? And is he succeeding, and what ways is he failing?
Well, on a positive note, I think that he succeeded, and this is for many conservatives, he succeeded by choosing a conservative Supreme Court justice. I guess that was definitely something that many conservatives could be proud about. However, there are several areas that I don't think that he did succeed in, or he is succeeding in, or in terms of keeping his promises, he's failed to keep his promises, and in terms of repealing and replacing Obamacare, that's something that he's failed to do. He has failed to unite the country, which is something that any president, regardless of what party you are a part of, should definitely treat as one of their first priorities. The border wall, what border wall, where have those plans gone? And there are just several other areas that I personally believe that Donald Trump has succeeded in not coming necessarily to the plate and accomplishing. He has divided several members within his own party, which isn't a good thing. And a lot of the things that he planned on replacing, a part of that were associated with the Obama administration, he's also failed at. So,
I think he has failed in numerous areas. One of them is his own administration. You can see now that a lot of the secretaries of the different departments have resigned already because either of corruption or not the ability to do the job correctly. You can also see him not keeping to his campaign promises. As many of you probably don't know, there's a Section 232 investigation which investigates national security issues in regards to products of trade. So for this particular investigation, it's aluminum and steel. And a lot of jobs in the steel industry have been lost due to trade, and Trump still has not taken action on this Section 232 investigation, which has let a lot of Americans down. They're losing their jobs, they're losing their benefits, and it's just, I think he's failed in numerous ways.
Well, I think on the Section 232 claims, you do end up learning a lot as you come into office, and I think what we see now, especially with campaign promises going unfulfilled in terms of the manufacturing industry, Donald Trump seems to be approaching a more globalist approach, even if he does maintain the America First policy. Because keep in mind that this is a guy who, this is his first foray into politics, aside from being vetted for the Reform Party in 2000. Like, he has no experience in any of this. And his promises changed, even on the campaign trail, about what he was going for. He went from drain a swamp to bringing in mainstream establishment Republicans, and he keeps firing members of his cabinet because it's time to bring in new people. And the guy, he had a TV show where his tagline was literally, "You're fired." He wants to bring in the best people for the job, and he's really trying to do that, but he's testing people out over and over and over. He's trying his best, but he has to learn the game. And at the same time, it seems like what he wants changes day to day. It's almost like he doesn't stick in it with anything consistently. aside from maybe a border wall. And we have seen some ideas actually be floated around for that. We've had private contractors come in and they've had to put ideas forward for the wall. We've seen ideas such as like a solar energy wall, just a basic tall wall, all the way down to a moat that goes from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean. So we're seeing things come through, but it's a really slow process right now as Donald Trump still learns how to behave in the White House.
I think the world affairs is definitely going a lot better than domestic. Domestically, healthcare is just not going anywhere. We're not sure where taxes are going to go. But then we look at world affairs. We've got countries, finally speaking out against North Korea. He said we're getting somewhere with the wall, and he's really connecting with other world leaders, which is something that I don't think Obama really did too well, because he's actually talking tough and it's paying off.
Yeah, to continue to hide behind the notion of President Trump not having any experience prior to entering the White House, I think that's a pretty weak excuse in many areas, because we hire somebody to be, well, the American people truly did hire President Trump to be president of the United States in hopes of him being able to deliver many of his goals or his plans of action, or to act upon them. And yes, he did not have any prior experience, but if you really think about it, would you want a doctor to operate on you that has had no prior experience in the medical field? So it really just, he can continue, Trump supporters or Republicans in general, or people who are supporting President Trump, they can continue to say, oh, well, President Trump has had no experience, he's a reality star, but I mean, at the same time, why would you would support somebody or vote for that person to occupy the most powerful position in the world when you don't have this crucial experience or any of the know-hows of government? And also, in terms of hiring, you even said it yourself, he went against one of his campaign pledges of draining the swamp by hiring some of the most established people in the establishment, or even hiring people such as Betsy DeVos for the Secretary of Education, who has very little experience or has a poor track record. So I guess that really speaks to how President Trump has been going as a president in many of his proposals so far. So
I'd like to touch again on Donald Trump's immigration policy, which will then bring us into worldly affairs. I want to know your opinion on his immigration policies, if you guys think that they are reasonable and feasible, and is building a wall something that you guys think will actually happen and be successful before or by the end of his term?
Well, Donald Trump's immigration policy, I think, first and foremost, is meant to keep us safe as Americans. And no matter how much we want to take in refugees and the like, the idea is to try to keep terrorists out of the country. First off, the so-called Muslim ban is the same ban that was implemented by Barack Obama in 2014. It is meant not to target Muslim nations, because Muslims are still allowed in from several countries. They're allowed in from countries that are not predominantly Muslim, and there are still Muslims in the United States. It's a ban on countries that are specific terrorist breeding grounds, and it's meant to keep us safe. The wall, I think, probably it would take 2 terms to actually build a wall, but the funding and the infrastructure for it could be in place by the end of a first term. I like the idea of a solar wall, personally, to provide free energy back to the United States and Mexico. I think that is the wonderful idea to build unity between the two nations and try to mend the rift that Donald Trump created on the campaign trail.
We're seeing that the borders have definitely been strengthened and the border crossings are down. And as regards to the wall, time will tell, kind of thing. But to me, I think that it might be, it's going to cost a lot of money. And as a conservative, I'm not sure if I can entirely. I like the idea, but I mean, I think we got to figure out a more economically feasible idea if we want this to go to fruition.
yes, the wall for starters, is economically, statistically, strategically, my bad, and logistically impossible. Several experts have proven that. In the United States, why are we trying to build walls? We should be building bridges. Also, you know, the amount of immigrants, like, I'm pretty satisfied with the current plan that the United States already has in place. In terms of you know, getting people into this country or removing immigrants, and you know, the immigration rate from Mexico, since President Trump, you know, has, you know, this huge vendetta against the country anyway, has gone down in recent years. And also in terms of the ban that he has placed on these Islamic countries, ISIS or ISIL, whatever it may be, they aren't coming out of those countries that he has placed a ban on. So in a sense, that's kind of pointless. I think that the ban is mean-spirited and it's unfortunate. And with the entire DACA situation, his new measures that he's put in place are, you know, technically stripping people from their homes, tearing families apart, and sending them back to a country that they essentially might not know anything about. Or, you know, they left that country at a very young age. So I just think that is a very mean-spirited and, you know, truly a pointless thing to do. You know, those aren't the people that are committing these, you know, terrible acts, and they should not be punished for, you know, various things that their parents put in place for them to make it to this country. So
I agree with Julian on a lot of these issues. I'd like to add that I would like to see a more open immigration system, a system that makes it easy for DACA students and to gain citizenship, to become a part of this country. They're paying taxes. They're actually paying to get a permit to work. Like, they're adding to the GDP. They're adding to education. We have DACA students here at Valpo. They are benefits of this country, and I think that we should treat them like that, and we should treat them like humans that they are, and not ship them back to a country that they barely remember. So I think that there needs to be an easier way for citizenship. And regarding the Muslim ban, I don't really know that much information about it, but I do believe that I'm very progressive on this issue, and I do believe that vetting these people to come into the country is wrong, and I do believe that essentially banning these people from entering the country is even worse. So I'd like to see changes on that, and I think that he's in the wrong on those issues as well.
And another thing about the Muslim ban, I mean, what is going to be his criteria for testing if people are Islamic? Like, do they have to recite portions of the Quran? Like, that's just something that, you know, you can't do, and it truly doesn't make any sense. Also, as it relates to the immigration policy from a more domestic side of things, he pardoned Joe Parcio, and that was not a good thing, because Joe Parcio has a very notorious track record of being discriminatory towards people who come from and who have an immigrant background, or if, you know, they are brown skinned or whatnot. So that's just another thing that shows that a lot of his immigration plans are essentially they're bottomless, or, you know, in my opinion, they might have an underlying racial tone to them. So
in terms of immigrants from Mexico and DACA recipients, I think that it's perfectly fair to strip away any advantages they may have. Because you said it yourself, these people have jobs, they're making money, they speak English, they may not even know anything about where they came from. Why not just do the paperwork? Why not become a United States citizen? We have amnesty programs that are in effect. Why don't we have these people actually taking the initiative and becoming citizens of the United States of America? We are a great country. What are they holding out on? And in response to your comments on the Muslim ban, how do you feel about when it was implemented by Barack Obama in 2014? Are you saying that he is the same way as Trump? Or are you just glossing over that fact and attacking Donald Trump because you feel as though he may have racist undertones for trying to keep us safe?
Similar to Megan Saurin, I don't have all the information about the Muslim ban, but what I do know is that President Obama's Muslim ban was different, drastically different than President Trump's Muslim ban, and that's something that needs to be understood. These are two completely different quote unquote bans on people who come from predominantly Islamic countries. And yeah, that's basically all I have to say about that. Do you have anything else to say?
The cost and time of getting United States citizenship is very grand. And some of these people do not have that kind of money or that kind of time to do it. Like, they're working 40 hours a week, they have families. It's very difficult to become a citizen in this country.
And also, these immigrants contribute greatly, and you even said this yourself, they contribute greatly to the GDP of the United States. So if you were to have this, essentially overnight mass overhaul of immigrants coming from, countries such as Mexico or other predominantly Hispanic countries where he has this ban in place, that would cause the United States economy to enter a huge recession, if not depression, like this country has never seen before. So that could have devastating effects on the overall country. I mean, these people are hard-working people who contribute greatly in many ways to the overall wealth of this country, and to just, take them out of here without any truly just reason, that would just be a horrible thing.
You said it yourself. These people are hardworking. They make money. They have the ability to pay the cost of citizenship. They have the time to wait in line. You can become a United States citizen as long as you work. And if we're being honest, most of the legal immigrants who are not DACA recipients are working less than minimum wage jobs. These are jobs that, if were not for the immigrants, would have been outsourced to China or to Mexico itself. The idea is that by standing in and doing construction work, why not just automate those jobs? It's cheaper to just have immigrants in the short time. If we want them to become a functioning part of the United States economy, we need them to become citizens. So they pay taxes, they work in jobs that can actually fulfill their living requirements, and they become a more productive part of this nation, because they sure can.
Thank you, both sides, for your responses. My next question is regarding Trump's relationship with other world leaders, and especially with North Korea. I believe if you guys had watched the United Nations General Assembly meeting, you would have seen Trump call the leader of North Korea Rocket Man. And I wanted to know if you guys think that Trump is a relatively dangerous leader with some of what he says, and if some of his kind of blatant use of rhetoric encourages a dangerous kind of nationalism in the United States.
All right, I'm just going to be quite blunt. Calling President Donald Trump a dangerous leader is an understatement. This person, this man, our president, is temperamentally unfit for these type of situations. I mean, and it's just true. You don't call the leader of a country who could potentially annihilate the United States and cause mass human destruction unlike this world has ever known, Rocket Man. I mean, really, you don't do that. And beyond it not being presidential, those are dangerous threats that could potentially cause, large ripple waves to come. Like, obviously, Kim Jong-un needs to be put in place. He needs to be put in his place. He needs to be dealt with, but he needs to be handled in the right way that will not only worsen tensions between the United States and North Korea, but could potentially put us, North Korea, and other countries in serious jeopardy. So, it's really unfortunate that we have someone in office, in my opinion, that, is handling this situation in such a particular way. It is very peculiar too. But, we need someone that has the right judgment and is fully able to handle these types of situations. And, our someone is President Trump, so I think that it is up to the National Security Council, his Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, who he criticized for trying to handle it in a diplomatic way, for, handling ties between North Korea and the United States. But it's up to those people and even our Vice President, Mike Pence, whom he seems to not listen to at all. But they need to rally behind Donald Trump and suggest positive alternatives or different alternatives in general to handling this situation. But by calling the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man, or by constantly, tampering with him or, testing him and pushing him to the edge bit by bit each day, that's just not a good thing. It's just not good.
I think that Trump's dangerous to other countries per se, because he's talking tough and it's paying off for him. He's getting other leaders on his side. You've seen the way that other leaders have responded to him. Like the other day, President Xi of China allowed him to dine in the Forbidden City, which is unheard of, and he's obviously he's getting other countries to turn on North Korea. And obviously, there should be some better ways. I think calling him Rocket Man, obviously, I don't think is helping the situation. I think that he should listen to other people in his cabinet and figure out a solution to get this handled safely.
I think the way that Donald Trump handles North Korea is brilliant. If we know what North Korea is trying to do, they're practicing a policy of brinksmanship. North Korea wants to expand into China, into South Korea, and the best way to do that is to destabilize the region via nuclear war. That's what they're trying to provoke. They want the United States, China, and Russia to go to war together. That's why South Korea is allied with the United States and the rest of NATO, and North Korea is allied with China and Russia, apart from the communist ties that originally put them in place. They provoke a war like that. The United States attacks China, and suddenly North Korea is free for expansion. What Donald Trump is doing, although it may be immature at times and he possibly could handle it better, he is exposing North Korea for what they really are. They are a lot of talk, they're no action, and all they want to do is provoke war. And we can see that through everything they have done since Donald Trump has become president. And the more he makes that obvious, the harder it is for the Chinese and Russian officials to maintain North Korea's position.
So we're going to bring it back home to our domestic issues. Recently, I think, how many days ago was it? About 2 or 3 days ago, on Monday, I believe, Texas had a killer at a church murder 26 people with a machine gun. Was that right? And so gun control and gun violence is clearly an issue in the United States, especially with what just recently happened in Las Vegas. Is this due to guns, or is it due to the quality of mental health and stability of Americans? And what kind of solution should America seek to reduce gun violence?
Personally, I think it's both. There is a lack of mental health care in this country. And second of all, there is a lack of gun control in this country. Now, I'm not here to say, let me take your guns. I think a hunting rifle's fine. I grew up in Indiana. I have no problem with that. But why does an average citizen need an AR-15? I think that's what they're called, machine guns that are made for combat. There's no reason that someone of our age or even any age to have that kind of weapon. And this issue is very, for me, it's very, what's the word? Touching. That's a good one, thank you. I was at the airport when the Fort Lauderdale shooting happened, and I just don't want anybody to go through that like I did. Not even kids. If I can't even get over it, how's a 5-year-old gonna get over it? And I just think there's no need for an average citizen to have a machine gun. So that's my stance on it. I think that gun controls are lacking in the United States.
So the scare tactic that Republicans or conservatives are trying to use is that Democrats or people who support the liberal agenda are just trying to take away people's guns. That is not the truth. That's even unconstitutional. We're not trying to take away your guns. We're just trying to make it where people can live. And by living, it's putting in place, what I mean by living, I'm saying you need to put in place certain gun rules, regulations, or pieces of legislation that can prevent Sandy Hooks, San Bernardino, or even Orlando or Las Vegas, or the list goes on, or Sutherland, Texas, to prevent these events from happening. If you look at Washington, D.C., they have some of the most strict gun regulations or pieces of legislation put in place, and they have a very, very, very low murder rate compared to Indianapolis that has very loose gun regulations in place, and they have a very high murder rate. So if you just compare those two, I mean, you should get an answer. Yes, there's, it has something to do with mental health, and that's definitely something that we should be paying attention to. But at the end of the day, these weapons of war should not be accessible to average, everyday citizens or any citizen unless they are fighting on battlegrounds.
I would also like to remind you that this was not an average everyday citizen and that he had been demissioned and was formerly part of the United States military.
Yeah, but he still wasn't.
Yeah, he still wasn't fighting in a war-torn area. He was in the United States, Sutherland, Texas. People in Sutherland, Texas don't need to walk around with AR-15s.
With the laws already in place, this shouldn't have happened. There are plenty of red flags up. In 2012, I think it was 2012, he escaped a mental health facility, and he was dishonorably charged from the Air Force, and a few times the Air Force, just never did paperwork to send his records in, and the kind of weapons that soldiers use are actually ones that you cannot legally buy in the U.S., which is something that countless soldiers have actually said, and I don't really know what the answer is, because it's kind of hard, because with evil there's nothing you can do. Evil will always find a way. I don't know how you get peace with evil. It's a very tough thing to say, obviously, but I mean, I just feel that it's obviously a very controversial subject, and I hope that eventually we can find a way to figure this out in an easy way. But it's so tough when you can't buy this. You couldn't buy it legal, anybody illegally. So it just happened, and which is why it was good that there was an NRA instructor who took on himself to come be a hero. And law enforcement said after that he pretty much did save others' lives, because at the very least because he had all these guns and ammo in his back seat, and so he wasn't done. And at the very least, there would have been a shootout with police. And the NRA instructor used AR-15, and he said that even with a pistol, it would have done minimal, if that, damage to him. And that obviously it's a tough thing to do, but he did what he had to do.
I think common sense gun reform is the way to go. I think that expanded background checks would probably be preferable, but keep in mind that the Texas church shooting, that man was not supposed to have guns anyway. He was on ban lists about 4 times over, but he still got them because of administrative oversight. It's not an issue with the law. It's an issue with the people administering the law, people in the basic ground level. If you look at, it's funny that you mention Washington, D.C. as having tight gun laws and less crime. The reason why they have less crime isn't tight gun laws. If you look at Chicago, another city with the same level of gun laws as Washington, D.C., over the July 4th weekend this year, 104 people were shot. And Washington, D.C. is safe because of the fact that the Pentagon is there. There's a military station there. There's CIA agents, FBI agents. You have tons of trained people. The Secret Service, they are all there, willing to protect people day in and day out. We don't see that security everywhere, because not everywhere is the capital of this country. Gun laws correlate more strongly with gun violence. If you hadn't had heroes like this NRA representative in the Texas shooting to stop the shooter, what would you do? The reason why the United States probably doesn't experience that many land invasions, even early on in its history, is because if you look at gun statistics, there's 1 gun for every 2 citizens. So an invading force, if they were ever to land attack the United States, think about getting shot at by every other house on your block in the suburbs. It's illogical for other countries to invade because of the defensive network that we've built up by the privatization of these assault class firearms. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I think people just need to use common sense. When someone checks in your hotel, it's going to be overlooking a venue with 22,000 people gathering the next day, and brings in 10 heavy suitcases for a 2-day stay. Why aren't you checking the suitcases? That just seems like hotel oversight. It's not the guns that are doing it. It's just that people aren't being smart with them.
All right, thank you guys so much. So to end the panel tonight, we have one question. So looking ahead, how do you view the future of your individual party? Please keep this short.
Well, based off of, what was it, last night's, the election night of 2 days ago, where we, the Democrats won big in a lot of their states, I think that our future is quite optimistic. Like, I think that it gave us the morale boost that we need. We have a Democratic governor in the state of Virginia now. In New Jersey, we just had a person, he was a Sikh, that was just elected to a government position. We had the first transgender person elected to another position. So Democrats won very big in their in this past election cycle. So I definitely believe that they gave us the morale boost that we needed. So, it's still up in the air in terms of who is our standard bearer or our party's leader, but I think that we, have a lot of good things to look forward to in the next election, especially starting with Congress and the 2018 primaries.
Yes. Fired up and ready to go. My thought process on this is that the Democratic Party is definitely working on being more inclusive. Yeah, more inclusive. That means not being as elite as we were before. I think that we still have progress to be made, but I do think it's being made. We have Tom Perez as our DNC chair, which I do wish it was Keith Ellison, but you take what you can get. And I do believe that voters are realizing that they made a mistake when they voted for Trump and they voted for Republicans down the ballot in 2016, seeing the progress that they have not made and the hatred that they have been spewing.
Well, as you all can tell, Donald Trump is clearly not polling well with the nation. So I think the chances that we lose the presidency in 2020 are pretty high, particularly considering the fact that John Kasich is opting for a third-party run, or at least that's what it looks like at this point. Beyond that, I think the Republican Party currently has an issue with social issues. A lot of the Republican Party is very old school, and they keep taking stances on things such as gay rights and racist beliefs that should not be taken. I think that the Republican Party in the future needs to be merging more with the Libertarian Party and focusing on social liberties. And I think that will really revitalize the younger generation, especially bringing Generation Z in as they're able to vote in the next few elections. And I feel like really just freedom for all around. That's what Republicans need to be looking for.
I think we're seeing a lot of people just come together and unify against, political correctness. And, I think what he said was very true. I think we need to try and, do a better job of finding middle ground with libertarians and just kind of limited government, getting that to be our motto. And I just want to say that I think that we do have some unity problems that we need to figure out, and social issues and all that. But I think that the future looks bright.
Thank you for your responses. So we have only about 5 minutes left, and we're going to open the floor to questions. Does anyone have any questions?
So how do you explain the fact that 1.1 million fewer Americans are on food stamps now since Trump has become president, how the stock market is at an all-time high, and how the jobless rate is so low?
Well, it's simple. He's riding the coattails of what the Obama administration did before. Great economic strides don't just fade overnight. And, President Obama left our economy in a fairly decent shape, and President Trump is just continuing to ride that high. Now, if that'll last throughout his term, we'll have to wait and see, but I think it's very much so as simple as that.
Do you guys have anything to add?
I do think there is something inherent in Donald Trump's personality and demeanor that really resonates with businessmen, especially because he is one. If you look at the day after the election results came in last year, the stock market did spike. There was a great increase in investment, especially in US-based manufacturing companies. I think that the presence of Donald Trump, even if businesses are thinking that he's just going to work for himself, is making it so that they think he's going to work for them too, and they're reinvesting within the United States rather than countries such as China or Mexico.
Any other questions?
One quick one on the weapons ban topic for the Democrats, or I guess for both, because as they talked about, we do have an assault weapons ban in our country already, and making it stricter, for example, like would take the guns out, like in this situation with the vigilante with the AR-15, who was ended up being able to take out the mass shooter. Like, why do you feel that taking out, since we already have an assault weapons bans and most of the guns that people are doing these mass shootings with are already illegal, why do you feel that like taking the guns out of the people's hands who may be able to protect in these situations is a good idea when the ones that are mostly used for the mass shootings are already illegal? I don't know if that made sense.
If I think I understand your question correctly, you're asking, are basically these weapons of war being put in the wrong hands? Or, because I don't think anyone needs these weapons, regardless of if they're trying to protect people. I mean, if they're associated with the FBI or the SWAT team or the police forces, that's different. But if you're just a regular, common, everyday citizen that does not wake up every morning to fight for other people or to protect other people, I don't believe that you need those weapons.
I guess I'm just asking, because we do already have like an assault weapons ban. It's not like assault weapons are just legal in our country.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just wondering, like, to what extent, like, what more do you want banned?
I'm going to toss this to Megan.
I'm gonna answer your question real quick.
Okay.
Can you hear me without this?
Yes.
Okay. If assault weapons, the ones that you're talking about, are banned, then have the guy from the NRA have one.
Are AR-15s legal in the country?
I do believe so, because the guy that shot in Las Vegas, he had his registered. He had 30 plus guns registered, and he was an average civilian.
Yeah, I believe the current ban on assault weapons that you cannot buy an intact AR-15.
You can't buy an intact AR-15 in the United States, but you can buy the parts and assemble it yourself.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Okay, perfect. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, so we have extended our time. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to both the Democrats and the Republicans for being here tonight, and for everyone. Thank you so much. We appreciate your presence. Thank you.
Your questions.
Thank you, guys.